I know. It's the wrong day, but we don't care.
Say what?
Say what?
Say what?
Say what?
Say
What?
Say what? Stop it!
Wrong date, wrong time. We don't care. We're moving to the beat of our own drum this morning, and the wonderful Dale Campbell is in studio with us on a Tuesday. The morning wake-up's going to look a little bit different this Thursday and Friday, which is one reason why we got Dale in. But more importantly, we love what Dale has to bring to the show in regards to unpacking a certain Bible verse.
Dale, kia ora and hello.
Morning, guys. How are you?
Very
Great.
good. Thank you for your consultation on my table saw that we were just talking about.
It's important stuff.
Dale's a woodworker, so
We always talk tools.
he's my muse when we talk wood in the studio.
That's right.
But you're also an expert on Bible stuff, theology.
I don't claim that title. Expert on my... Anyways, carry on.
You are a professional employed Christian.
There you go. There you
Full
go.
time.
That's
so,
right.
I mean, you can't say not.
Professionally religious.
Hey, so last week, what we were talking about a little bit about the garden, Adam and Eve,
yeah.
and the eating of the fruit. You wanted to go a little deeper, a little bit further on this.
Yeah, because I just continue to reflect on it in my own life. You know, the way that eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we do that on an everyday basis. And I want to be like God. I want to play God. I want to judge others and run the universe. And we see in Genesis 3 how this leads to shame and blame with Adam and Eve, and anger and murder with Cain and Abel. So it's like all kinds of bad. So this is like probably why God said, don't eat of that tree, you'll die. So stop playing God. Fast forward to Jesus. He's renewing humanity. You know, in Genesis, humanity is brand new. And in the Gospels, Jesus is creating a new humanity to save humanity. So he's teaching them these things. And one of the parables that he gives, kind of tucked away in Matthew's Gospel, is about the wheat and the tares, or the wheat and the weeds, right?
Yeah, what's a tear?
A
'Cause
weed.
Okay.
And that's all I know, really. Like, you'd have to Google it to find out more than I know about tares.
You know what? I'm going to. Because it's spelled, when you say tears, I'm thinking like,
I know.
crying.
Is it still
tears.
used today, that word?
Probably not.
Yeah, because that's all I know. It's a weed.
Yeah, traditional, Bible teaching language, the wheat and the
Okay.
tares.
All right,
yeah.
guys, sorry. It's vetch. It's a vetch.
Yes, I thought it
Especially
was.
the common vetch.
I thought it was. Of
So
course.
I'm glad that we've brought that.
I was going to say that, but I didn't want to intimidate
It's
you.
an injurious weed. Injurious.
Yes, that's right. And so you got a guy, he tells this parable, this story to make a point, of a guy that sows wheat, and then in the middle of the night, an enemy comes in and plants these weed seeds,
Yeah.
right? And so when the plants start to appear, they see not only wheat, but they see these weeds. And so the servants of the owner say, shall we just go pluck up the tares or the weeds? And the owner says, actually, surprisingly, no, don't do that. Because you're going to tear up the weed with them, the wheat with them. You'll tear out the good with the bad. And so I just think it's interesting because it's like he's saying, you don't put yourself in the position of judging and sorting out good and bad. Don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Don't get in the business of judging, because you'll harm the good while you're trying to sort out the bad.
Yeah.
And I think this plays out, oh my gosh, in 1,000 different ways, right? In modern life, humans do this to one another. We're always trying to sort out. We always just assume I know I'm right and I know the other person's wrong. Just think about the way that we talk about politics and what's in our news feeds, right? And in the church, we've kind of got. I actually quite love the whole spectrum of the church. Like every kind of Christian is a Christian I can probably try to learn from. But when it comes to like how our instinct to sort out the world, this eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil can surface, where we try to think that, oh, that's a weed over there, I need to go pluck that up. We might be doing that from a really conservative posture or place where we're wanting to pull out the weeds that are compromising biblical truth. And we see things happening in the world or maybe in the church, and we're like, we got to go sort out those weeds.
Yep.
And we know we're right, and we're going to go aggressively plucking weeds. we might also do that from a progressive point and say, oh, those fundamentalists, they're making us all look bad. They're hateful. They're wrong. Blah, blah, blah. I know I'm right. I know they're wrong. And want to go pluck those weeds. I think we just have to be very careful that we're not just being very judgmental and doing more harm than good and plucking out the weed as well.
Well, there's some people who may not necessarily have weeds, but you're concerned for their well-being. You're
Yes.
concerned for their current state.
That's right.
It's okay. So differentiating between the two and trying to do good by that person.
That's right.
We need to be a little bit more disconcerting in that regard.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that, Silla, because it is, I think having I'll just say the word activist, having an activist, outward-looking kingdom of God, bring the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. We're not just waiting around, right? We want to get out in the world and make a difference, right? Having an activist posture is actually biblical. Biblical activism, right? So protest and resistance. I mean, whether you're protesting, well, gosh, something like abortion, or whether you're protesting fundamentalism or whatever it is, resistance and protest is okay. I mean, I've got friends on both sides at the extremes, if you like, of a recent thing that's happened in Auckland that we don't need to even go into. But they're militantly against one another. I don't think they know one another.
Yeah.
And I think they would both agree with what I'm about to say, that resistance and protest is okay, but violence and demonizing, that starts to be plucking out the weeds and playing God, eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And Jesus says, no, let them grow up together and I'll sort it out at the end of the age.
That's a really just difficult thing, though,
Right?
Dale, because, a lot of people are like, no, I don't want to just stand by
I'm like that.
in life. And I see something that's wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm not just going to let it be on my watch. And, but then you read a parable like this where it says to almost do that in certain times or examples of like, you don't have to play God. And I like that thing that you're bringing back to about that eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, of trying to play God. Is the whole thing is always that.
That's it.
But then, it's hard because it's a general idea, but it's not a specific example, right? So you're trying to relate an idea to then your life or situation to be like, well, how does that parable look in this situation that I'm faced with? And it will be different for all, the things people will be thinking of will all be different, right? And then you're like, well, where do I take action? Where am I called to speak up or say something or address an issue, pull out a weed, as to say? Because in the parable, it does go on to say, like, let them both grow together until the harvest. At that time, I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burned, and then gather the wheat and bring it into my barn. So it's not like there's no justice for the weeds or whatever in the story.
Yeah.
It's not just like step back and let the garden fall apart.
That's right.
But then what is that? Now we're getting into some real deep analogies here with gardening that I'm like, okay, I don't even know how the harvesting part works.
This is one of the most relevant things for our everyday life, in social media. So imagine a police officer, right? A police officer cannot just sit back and say, well, I'm not going to arrest that guy because I don't want to tear out the weeds.
God will sort it out in the end.
No, our job, this is why protest and resistance is okay. Action is okay. Activism is okay. Demonizing, escalation, violence, intimidation, aggression, no, we're actually creating more injustice. So resisting injustice wrongly creates more injustice. Every oppressor was probably once oppressed and justified their violence by reactive vengeance.
Wow.
So we make it worse in our ability to try to do good.
Would it be fair to say, I'm just trying to bring it back down to maybe...
bring us home.
Not using the violence as an example, but while you were talking there, I was thinking more as a parent.
Yes.
When you're raising children, right? And weeds are growing all over the place around my house, you know? But sometimes it's okay just using exactly what you've spoken there, and that's why it resonates with me. You have to let them grow up with the weeds.
Come on.
To learn their own path.
That's right.
But then you do a little bit of trimming as a parent, and a little bit of gardening and maintenance, because that's your role as a parent to say, okay, well, this is where I'm trying to lead you, but you're gonna have weeds.
That's right.
And maybe you need to sort out your weeds for yourself.
That's right.
Well, that's the thing, right? When you bring it to a personal level,
Yeah.
of being like, sort of being okay with some of the weeds maybe in your
Yeah.
own life, not
Yeah.
immediately being pulled out and it only being the crop that you want or the fruit of what you
Yeah.
think your life should be, but being okay with, in the end, all of those things maybe will be addressed and God will do work in all of those
Oh
parts
my
of my
gosh.
life.
Yeah.
But maybe not all of them at the same time in just a
At the
rampant spring cleaning of the garden.
at the political, the interpersonal, the public, and the personal,
Yeah.
the interpersonal, intrapersonal, inside myself, mercy, patience, letting God be God,
And
letting
a
God be the judge.
And a
It's needed.
lawnmower. And a lawnmower. Yeah.
Come on. And
Some
a
people
lawnmower.
just get in there with the glyphosate and they're like, just round up the whole thing. And you're like, I don't think long term that'll be it.
God's got it.
Hey, it's a cool picture. And if you want to read around it, the parable, by the way, that we're talking of, the parable of the weeds, is in Matthew 13, verse 24 onwards, if you do want to check it out. A lot in there, Dale.
Thanks for the chat, guys.
Cheers, DC.